Okay, so I just finished going through all of the pages of this journal and kind of reading the prompts and what my responses to these prompts were. And so the title of this journal is A Journey Within, an introspective activity journal to help to get to know yourself better. So I guess my final thoughts on that would be, do I feel like it helped me to get to know myself better? I would say yes and no, but overall yes. I would encourage you to either get this journal or follow along my videos and think about how you might respond to the prompts that are in here. The reason I say maybe, see, I don't know if this would be as helpful for other people as it has been for me, because I had already kind of like started like introspection like a couple years before I started doing this journal. So I think if I would have done this journal like 5 years ago, I may not have gotten as much out of it as I did doing it at the time that I did it. And even like this was only like a year later that I started, or even I don't even know when. It was like several months after I finished this that I started making these videos. And so even some of the thoughts on some of the stuff I had written just a year ago have changed. So I would say this wouldn't just be the end all be all. I would say like revisit some of these things and see how the thoughts change on them. But especially like in reading them back and doing these videos, I noticed some consistent themes that were coming through. And I mean, especially like since I'm in school and I'm trying to finish my PhD, like that was a big theme that kept coming up, was, you know, being kind of stressed about that and not knowing what the future is. But there was also a couple of other things, like a lot of the prompts that would ask about like what are your failings, or what do you think are you self-conscious about or lacking? And you know, I realized that like I have issues with commitment and making connections with people and self-confidence, but I always kind of knew that, so it wasn't like anything really super enlightening. But yeah, it was kind of interesting to see that those themes kept coming up and coming up. And I actually just today started reading this book. It's Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents. And I don't know that it necessarily came out of this. It was like a combination of this and then honestly like TikTok videos and social media posts about like other people that are dealing with things similar to me, like with their parents and cutting off their parents. And so far I finished the first chapter. I'm getting into the second chapter of this, and a lot of it is making sense. Like it actually talked about, you know, if you have parents that aren't, and I didn't really think my parents were emotionally immature. Definitely my dad, but I didn't think my mom was. Like I felt like my mom was like a good parent. But now I'm kind of recognizing that, you know, there are some parents that on the surface appear to be good parents, or appear to be good parents by comparison, but are maybe not meeting all the needs of the children. You know, they might be meeting like the physical needs, but not really the emotional needs. And I'm kind of thinking that that may have been the case. Like, you know, it's talking about, you know, you end up feeling alone and like you don't want to open up to people because you've never really had a person in your life that you've, especially like in your family, that you felt like you could like open up to and be yourself and be completely honest with and vulnerable to. And you know, I always thought it was kind of like a failing on my end. I'm like, well, I didn't try to open up to them, but they weren't really open to me either. And so I just kind of kept to myself most of the time. And yeah, like I don't blame my mom. Like I think that she had some issues with herself. And so, yeah, I never really felt like a super strong emotional bond and attachment to her or really anyone else in my family, more so with my grandpa and even my grandma to some extent. But reading this book, I am starting to understand like why my mom may have had issues, because I think maybe my grandmother to her was one of these emotionally immature parents, and so that may be where it came from. But yeah, I don't know, through reading through this book and understanding things about myself and then kind of putting together other things that I've been looking into, I think it's come down to this. This seems like pretty on point with some of the issues that I have maybe with making connections to people and social connections. So I don't know, I'm gonna keep reading this book and see. It's supposed to have ways to kind of get over it and have a healthy connection and be emotionally vulnerable to other people. But I don't know, one thing I worry about, that I was thinking about when I was reading this, because it talks about like historically, and you know, there was the one prompt in this journal where it does talk about like the importance of having bonds and connections with other people, and I was talking about how I struggle with it, but I think that's a problem with a lot of people in the US specifically. Like we've almost made it a part of our culture to try to like be self-reliant and not really depend on other people. And so I feel like trying to get out of this, it'll be hard to like come across other people that are like not emotionally immature. I feel like for decades it's just been the way people have been raised, to kind of suppress their emotions and feelings and not share them with other people, or not share them in like a healthy way. Or like I think some people are like sharing them but not reciprocating with the other person, so the person that's like sharing it is just kind of like dumping a lot of this on one person, and then the other person, and they're not open to like reciprocating it back. And so the person they're dumping it on feels like it's just like too much, but then they're not willing to like reciprocate it back. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I feel like maybe there's just like a huge problem with our culture right now. And it does seem like, at least on TikTok and some social media, that some people, there's a big group of people, specifically like millennials and Gen Z, and not all of them by any means. Like maybe I'm just on that side of social media that the algorithm's pushing these people that are going through the same things as me like my way. But it does seem like people are starting to recognize this and starting to work on it. So I don't know, maybe I can work through some of this and then start to form like bonds with people. I would like to be able to trust people and open up to people. But it is kind of scary, because one thing it says in the book is like, you know, because you've been around people that were emotionally immature or emotionally absent, like that's the type of people you're drawn to because that's what you're used to. And so maybe there are more people that are more open out there, and it's just that's not the ones that I've been connected to, because that's not what I'm used to. So I don't know, I'm gonna keep doing the work. I do think this is like a good starting point just to start thinking about things. I think it can be helpful, especially if you're someone who's already starting to kind of evaluate yourself and your thoughts and your feelings and your emotions on different things. So yeah, I would definitely recommend checking this out, and like starting to do some introspection. But yeah, that's, I guess, my final thoughts on it. I don't know what I'm gonna do moving forward. I've mentioned that I have this tarot journal that I think may be useful, and I've mentioned this a couple times before, that like I don't necessarily like believe in astrology and all that stuff, you know, that where the planets were when you were born could have like a substantial impact on your personality and your life. But I do think I think the tarot cards could play a similar role to like this, as in the sense that, you know, if you look at like what the meaning is of the card and try to like consider whether that relates to your life or what you're going through that day, I think they could be helpful in just kind of helping you examine, you know, how you feel about yourself, or if you can relate to that. So I don't know, I'm thinking about doing this and just pulling like a card every day and like journaling my thoughts on like the card that I pull, and if I think it really relates to me, or you know, how I feel about it. So that may be something coming up, but for probably the rest of the month I don't necessarily have any plans. But maybe in March, or maybe after I finish my qualifying exams, I may get back to doing more work like this. In the meantime, I'm going to try to finish this book this week. And then, I don't know, just keep working on figuring myself out, I guess, and trying to be better. But yeah, so that's it. And I will be back maybe at some point in the future with something else. In the meantime, I guess I'll just keep posting my, you know, kind of fitness updates and whatever else I feel like posting. So that's it.